But there I was, just ready to go to bed last night. The story breaks, and I got sucked into Martin Lipton's vortex because there was
what a band they were.
Yeah, there was an exclusive in The Sun, £4.5 billion bid for Tottenham from an American consortium led by a sort of tech bro.
If it's not this one, it'll be another one. It's definitely going to get sold.
The club, in the last hour or so, as we said, have issued a statement unequivocally rejecting the bid, unofficial bid. I think they called it, I think, casual bid, and what the wording was. But anyway, they're saying they're still not for sale. They maintain that. But isn't everybody for sale at the right price? Let's chat now to the man who broke the story, the Sun's very own Martin Lipton. Good afternoon, Martin.
Good afternoon, and never get sucked into the vortex, whatever happens.
So, as I said, the story's moved on a bit. For people who haven't seen the story today or know much about it, it's probably worth giving a little bit of background. I don't expect you to give up your sources, but the level of detail in your piece would suggest they're pretty close to the source of this bid. So tell us a little bit more about this guy, Brooklyn Earick, and his consortium.
Well, I think it's fair to say we're talking about a slightly colourful character here. Now, I had to do a bit of research when I found out about this. So I discovered that Brooklyn Earick, and that's how it's pronounced apparently, is 41 years old, from Ohio, used to be a DJ in what he described as electronic music. Now, you will know better than I, being cutting-edge youngsters, electronic music might be. Sure. I have no flipping idea whatsoever. Yeah. Nevertheless, that's what he did. He did lots of clubs across the world, including in Europe. Apparently his favourite club is the Escape in Amsterdam. I'm sure you're regular habitués there.
Yes. Yeah,
extremely well.
Got a season ticket.
It's in the Rembrandt Platz, apparently. So it's right at the Rembrandt Plain, right in the middle of Amsterdam. So
nice.
That's a cooking spot, if that's the
He'll buy Ajax instead now. Don't give him any ideas.
So he then ended up working for NASA briefly. I don't quite know what role, and then went into some sort of tech role. He launched a number of apps, blockchain, all these things that you and I probably don't understand. No. Nevertheless, he is putting together this consortium of a dozen Americans, a number of whom apparently are NFL and NBA owners or have part ownership in clubs in those leagues, to buy Tottenham. And the bid that's on the table, which has been indicated rather than formally put at this stage, as we reported last night, is 3.3 billion up front, plus a 1.2 billion pot to spend on players. And obviously that's not just fees, that's wages and agents' fees and all the stuff that goes around it. So Spurs are not going to spend 1.2 billion on players in January for a variety of reasons. One, that you can only change 3 in your Champions League squad anyhow, and it doesn't quite work like that. Nevertheless, there is a substantial, significant, and by Tottenham's standards, unprecedented potential spending pot, which, given the historic situation with the wage bill left by Daniel Levy, there's a lot of leeway for them to spend a lot of money. There's no doubt about that. Now, that bid was an informal bid tabled directly to Earick and the Lewis family. The expectation from Brooklyn Earick was that it would be rejected, because that's what happens. No one accepts the first bid. It wouldn't accept the first bid if you're negotiating in a market stall, do you? I mean, it's let alone for a multi-billion-pound business. Forbes, the business magazine, values Spurs at 2.6 billion, so 3.3 is a 27% uptick on that. Suggests to me that there's going to be significant interest in listening to this bid properly, if and when it's formally made. The announcement by the stock exchange today puts a deadline by which Earick and his team must make that formal bid, which is 5 p.m. on October 24. My understanding is that the bid will be made significantly before that.
That from Enoch to Earick.
That's true.
Similar,
that will be the title of the book when Martin writes it. Now, the club have not only said that they've rejected this informal expression of interest, they've also said the board and the club and Enoch reconfirmed that Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, and Enoch is not looking to sell its stake in the club. So they are doubling down on something they said a couple of weeks back after Daniel Levy left. I mean, they seem pretty strong on the fact that they don't want to sell and they're not prepared to sell. But how do you view that, Martin?
Alexander Isak was not for sale.
Yeah, exactly.
Any price, apparently. Look, if you've got a property which you value and someone wants to buy it, You don't say, yeah, let's do a deal. You say, no, I'm not interested in that. Of course you do. That does not mean that I'm saying that the club is going to be sold to Brooklyn Earick and his team. Nevertheless, the fact that they've gone to the stock exchange to announce that they've rejected the initial approach is fairly evident that there was an initial approach, if nothing else. And to use a phrase beloved of a bloke born on April 23rd, 500 years ago, the game's afoot. And now let's see how it plays out.
Paul made a very interesting point there about American owners, and that once they get to 14 American owners...
It's Danny Kelly's Doomsday Scenario, who were another good band. They supported the Martin Lipton Vortex, I think, at Glastonbury. But Danny makes the point that it's this idea of a critical mass of US owners getting to 14, having the power to veto, really, in the Premier League, and saying, yeah, let's do away with promotion and relegation. Who needs all that uncertainty in our businesses? I mean, look, it is the Doomsday Scenario.
I think that's a genuine threat. I think that people were fearful. What I would say is the regulator would probably be able to preclude that, as would the FA with its golden share. But we know the Americans don't understand the concept of promotion and relegation. They think it's ludicrous, small-minded thinking by small-minded people on a small-minded part of the planet that isn't America. Nevertheless, that is the model of most global football. And indeed, I think MLS are talking about Division 2 as well. So maybe even the Americans are starting to get the hang of the idea.
It might be the end of PSR, though.
It could be the end of PSR.
Financial rules, albeit they've still got the clubs in Europe have still got to meet UEFA regs on squad cost ratio, which is 70% of wages and transfers of revenue. So there is a degree of financial rules that even the owners can't get round. I think paralleling, mirroring UEFA rules is the obvious way forward for the Premier League, but a lot of clubs at the moment don't want to do that and want to stick with PSR, which I think is a folly, but that's because they think there's more leeway and latitude and loopholes they've yet to take advantage of. What I do think would become more pressing as far as most fans are concerned, if you do get a 14 Premier League owners from America, and I said this to Richard Masters when we met in August, despite him being insistent that there's no plans and no interest and no willingness and no wish to play games abroad, there's nothing he can do if 14 of his clubs want to do it. And that, I do believe, is a genuine threat. And it's interesting today, we've had news from Spain where the supporter groups of both Barcelona and Villarreal, 18 different fan groups, have written to the Spanish FA pleading with them to intervene to stop that game between those two teams being played in December. The reality is this direction of travel. We know that the Serie A want to play Milan v Como in Australia. It would be unusual for the Premier League not to look to do that if the clubs wanted to, or they would do it if the clubs wanted to. And you'd end up selling those games in America in a separate contract, I suspect, which would end up making the clubs a fortune more. And as we know, it's all about the money.
Sure.
Money.
Yes, Martin, thank you. It's a great story.
Martin,
I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on it. So we'll keep reading and look for developments in the US consortium takeover. Thanks very much.
Cheers, then.
There's Martin Lipton there from The Sun, who broke that story last night about a potential takeover at Spurs. We said the club are saying that they've rejected this informal move, but as Martin said, the game's afoot. We shall see.
talkSPORT.